Some play the whole season for moments like this one. Game 3, Super Regional, Athens tonight, 7 p.m.
You are Locked On Wolfpack, your daily podcast on the NC State Wolfpack, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Wolfpack Nation? It's time to get locked in with Locked On. Thanks for making Locked On Wolfpack your first listen each and every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's sponsor is LinkedIn. These days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. That's why LinkedIn Jobs helps find the right people for your team faster and for free. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnCollege. Terms and conditions apply. Happy Monday to all. As always, I'm Grayson Boone, joined by former Wolfpack defensive tackle Kenton Gibbs. We do have a Game 3 to discuss the potential of here on Monday. NC State has spent the weekend down in Athens in the Super Regional, blew them out on Saturday in Game 1, 18-1. The offense was on fire, marked by that 11-run second inning. Sam Highfill was also excellent with his start. He went 6 innings, only gave up 1 run. That is exactly what we needed him to do in that spot. It was all things Wolfpack on Saturday. Basically, anything we wanted, we got. We were even helped by the Georgia defense as they were making miscues left and right. Absolutely smoked them in Game 1, and right off the bat, it was all Wolfpack at all times. Kenton, what were your thoughts after that big win on Saturday?
You know, it kind of felt like it was a really great game, but there was also that moment where you thought back to Arkansas and the Omahawks,
Exactly. Yes.
right? They beat the living daylights out of us in Game 1. And it was like, did they use up all their runs? Did their bats use up? You know, I didn't really say much about it, but I looked at that game and I said everything went right. And the beauty of how that game went is, you know, you and I talked about this off air. The bullpen was not needed. As good as the bullpen has been, you did not need your best arms coming out of the bullpen to do heavy, meaningful work. It wasn't, hey, this is 1-1. You got to be nails, brother. If you let one leave the yard, all of a sudden the entire complexion of this thing changes. It was over. It was over. And so, you know, it was a great game. Everything that could have gone our way did. Absolutely amazing day in Athens on Saturday. But, again, I knew then the series is not over. Yeah. It is not over yet. I wanted to yell out, stop the count. Stop the count, send them Omaha. But that's not how this thing works. And so I knew, you know, that's kind of like excitement, but with bated breath. Like, I don't want to let out my, hey, everybody, book your tickets to Omaha now type of deal. Because, again, there was still time, or there is still a game to be played, games to be played in hindsight. But there was still at least one more game to be played.
Maybe better than any other school in the country, NC State knows that these series are not won after a blowout victory in Game 1. In fact, you can just ask Arkansas how their trip to Omaha was in 2021. They didn't make it. We did. And they beat the brakes off of us. It was 21-2 back then in Game 1, and then we all know how the rest of that history went. So, yes, it did kind of have a similar feel. Wolfpack were all over the Bulldogs. They sort of waved the white flag probably around like the 3rd or 4th inning of that Game 1. The way the Super Regionals are set up in this best-of-3 format, there's only so much clawing back you can do at the risk of burning key arms for potentially these other games that you're going to need later in the weekend. So that was the story on Saturday for Georgia, and unfortunately, that was the story for NC State on Sunday as Georgia beat us by a score of 11-2. Very similar kind of format. They got up early, smoking the ball out of the ballpark. That was our biggest fear kind of coming into this series, is the way that they can utilize the long ball. Dom Fritton struggled to keep guys in the ballpark. I believe they hit 3 home runs off of him. Maybe it was 2, but felt like a whole lot more with the way the ball was flying out of the ballpark. And then kind of in that same breath, NC State found themselves in a gigantic hole. I still had confidence that they were going to put enough quality at-bats together to string themselves back into it, but just couldn't find enough consistency. A lot of folks were talking about that massive base running error by Jacob Kozart early in that one. I think that was the 3rd inning. Fly ball out to pretty shallow right center field. He tries to tag and go to 3rd, gets absolutely hosed. That inning very quickly fell apart as quickly as it had potential. And then after that, just felt kind of flat.
I think that the blown out offensive opportunities was kind of the story of the day, right? Like every time it seemed like, oh man, we get somebody in scoring position, or every time it's like, oh man, we got a guy with some speed on base. Haha, LOLJK double play. Haha, like, you know, it was just back-to-back moments of, you know, baseball is, as much as we talk about, hey, chicks dig the long ball, and that's what this thing is all about. Baseball is a thinking man's sport. And sometimes you've got to come up with ways to generate runs and manufacture runs if you don't have a ton of guys with power. And that's what you and I talked about previously when talking about this team and saying everybody has to do their job. That means we're not expecting Cozart to go yard 3 times in the series. We're not expecting that. It's great if it happens, don't get me wrong, you know, but that's not something that we go in expecting of him, because that's not what you know him to do. So you're asking yourself, hey, just be smart. Just generate runs any way you can. Just generate the best base running you can, and that puts you in a good position. And it's not just about him, because he wasn't the only one. Yes, that base running error was egregious, but there were other moments in yesterday's game where if things were a little bit different offensively, you could be looking at a very different game. And again, every time it just seemed like whenever we had runners in scoring position, whenever we had guys on base, all of a sudden our batters were deer in headlights, and it wasn't going too well for us.
Obviously, the rest of the day continued to not go the way of the Wolfpack, but the best way to categorize a day like we had on Sunday, you've definitely heard me say it on here before, that's baseball. Baseball is the craziest, most nonsensical sport at times. And so the moment you think you got it figured out, you'll see 18 runs in one day, and you can't string together literally anything the following day. That is baseball. It is not transitive from day to day. It can be if you dig into their bullpen, which we did not. You can put up 1 billion runs on Saturday. Those do not count for anything on Sunday. We just found that out the hard way. So something else I will say about baseball, don't ever think that you're out of it, especially in college baseball. I know lots of folks watched the Clemson-Florida series. That was insane. Evansville was giving Tennessee a run for their money. Evansville, of all schools, they made a comeback in game 2 to take that series to a game 3. Do not ever think that you are out of the ball game in college baseball, because the volatility of this sport with these arms and these young bats, it can go in literally any direction in the blink of an eye. I remember back in the ACC tournament, we were playing Duke. They had, I think it was 6 runs in like 4 minutes of real time. That fast, a dynamic of a game can change. So game 2 obviously did not go our way, and that leads us into the discussion of game 3. It is tonight, 7 p.m. We get the primetime slot. There's some pros and some cons to that. The pros, we all get to watch instead of having to haggle at work and trying to figure out how to watch it in the middle of a work day. The cons, it's a primetime game, and I'd have to imagine the dog fans are going to be bringing all the barks they can possibly bark in one evening down there at Foley Field. However, I say all that to say that does not change how I feel about the way NC State is set up for this game. We said it already. We have still not used any of our key pieces out of the bullpen. Jacob Duden has not thrown. Derek Smith has not thrown. Cooper Consiglio has not thrown. Logan Whitaker will start this game. He's another fresh arm. We have the better pitching setup in this game by far. Georgia, they may have to piecemeal some things together, but just 1-to-1, they do not have the pitching staff that we have. So that's an early advantage to NC State. But something else you heard me talk about last week, I said I predicted these games would be won or lost more than likely in the first 4 to 5 innings. Was I right or was I right? Saturday, we scored 11 in the second inning. That was pretty much game over. Sunday, they had us down by like 8 in like the third or fourth inning, and that was effectively game over there. I still think that will be the case again on Monday night. So for NC State, you have to treat this like a 5-inning ball game. You have to do whatever it takes to get your bullpen a lead by that 5-inning mark and then have them take it over from there. Because if you can pass it off to Jacob Duden, Derek Smith, and Cooper Consiglio with a lead, I have all the confidence in the world that they're going to be able to take us home, because they have been on an absolute heater, as we've talked about last week. So I will debate you at any and all times that college baseball has the #1 most exciting postseason, as we saw all weekend and we're bound to see tonight in Athens, Georgia. Game 3, Kenton, any additional thoughts before they go for a shot for Omaha tonight?
I'm going to say this. I believe in this team. You all should believe in this team. If they get down early, don't stop believing in this team, because Baseball, more than any other sport, you are literally one inning away from it's so over to we're
Literally
so back.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's you are right around the corner from everything you want all the time. I'm going to call out Logan right now. Brother, you've got to get it done. You've got to get it done. You've got to show up prime time. If there is ever a moment for you to cement your legacy as a legend at NC State, right now is the time. This is where legends are made, and I'll leave it there.
It's quite a special storyline for Logan Whitaker himself. He's battled several injuries his entire career here at State, let alone just this season. He missed about a month and a half with some unknown illness. I still don't know if they ever found the reason behind all that. He gets back healthy enough to go here right before the postseason, and now he has the biggest start of his life here on Monday night. He's winner take all, game 3 on the road. It will be a hostile environment. One of our oldest players on this roster. What a humongous spot for him to try and lead us back to Omaha. The recipe for tonight is Logan Whitaker giving you probably, like I said, 4 to 5 strong innings, hopefully with a lead. If you can bridge that to Duden, probably around the 5th-ish inning, you're in a great spot. If Whitaker gets in trouble early, I think you have a very quick trigger. I'm talking Jacob Duden as early as like the 2nd inning. I think you can't be afraid to already jump into damage control if it starts looking bleak very early. You can't be messing around here in a game 3. The way that Georgia can swing the bat and the way that the atmosphere will be down there, you have to tamp out very quickly any amount of bleeding that occurs. But again, we have the better bullpen. We have the offense to get it done. This roster is built for moments like this, and I can't wait to watch us get it done tonight down in Athens. Coming up next, we're getting into 2 2025 football commitments. A big weekend for NC State in another sense, as football is growing the pack. After a quick word from our sponsors. Our first sponsor of the day is LinkedIn. When you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are just right for that role. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. LinkedIn isn't just another job board. They help you hire professionals that you simply cannot find anywhere else. And even those who aren't actively searching for a new job, but they may be open to just the perfect role. In a given month, over 70% of LinkedIn users don't visit other leading job sites. So what does that mean? If you're not looking on LinkedIn, you're looking in the wrong place. On LinkedIn, over 86% of small businesses can get a qualified candidate within just 24 hours. So you can hire professionals like a professional on LinkedIn. LinkedIn also knows that small businesses are wearing so many hats, they simply might not have the time or resources to hire effectively. That's why LinkedIn is constantly finding new ways to streamline this process. Join the 2.5 million small businesses that are using LinkedIn for hiring purposes. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Now time to switch gears and talk about some football recruiting. As I mentioned, 2 big-time 2025 football commitments happened over the weekend. The first of which we'll talk in this segment is Robert Jones III, also known as RJ Jones. He's a 3-star corner from Vero Beach, Florida, listed at 5'11", 165. His top 5 schools that he was choosing from, UCF, USF, Louisville, and Illinois. Appears that he also had official visits lined up to UCF and Illinois in the coming weeks, but was at NC State this weekend for his official visit, decided that was all he needed to see, and he is now running with the pack. Something I also noticed amongst all the recruiting sites is they had South Florida, USF, as the front runner on many of these. So perhaps this was a surprise to see him commit this early, but nonetheless, it's a really good get for Tony Gibson and the Wolfpack.
Oh, absolutely. When you talk about the secondary and the legacy that's being built here, in terms of having one of the better secondaries in the nation, you build it with guys like RJ Jones. He has one of the more impressive offer lists that I've seen in quite some time for a 2025 guy that's not being mentioned in All-American conversations and whatnot. But if you just look at what he's if you just look at the schools who are, hot on this trail, you look at Auburn, you look at Florida, you look at the top 5 that you obviously mentioned there, but you look at Kentucky as well, Louisville, Miami, SMU. You've got a ton of schools that are direct competitors of NC State. You have a ton of schools that are in conferences that are objectively getting a lot bigger payouts than what NC State is, and yet this young man still decided to come here. There was something that he loved that much about Raleigh, that much about this coaching staff, that much about the environment here in Raleigh, to say, hey, as soon as I can, let's get pen to paper and let's get this thing done, even though we know signing day is quite a ways away.
I was reading through the commitment article posted by Brian Doan of 247 Sports. It said that NC State had identified RJ Jones pretty early in his recruitment process as one of their top corners. And then, as they often do, they stay on these recruits to let them know how big of a priority they are to this program and to this team. I want to pick out a couple quotes I also saw from this article that stuck with me. Both of these come from RJ Jones directly. The first of which here says, quote, "I'm a defensive player and their defense is outstanding. They develop their players every year and I love being developed. I want to make it to the NFL, but even if I don't, I want to be developed. I see that at NC State," unquote. That speaks to everything that Dave Dorn and Tony Gibson have been building here for years on end. The culture that all of our players talk about whenever they get the chance to, when they have a microphone in their face at the end of a game, Peyton Wilson especially, the culture, the culture, the culture. This is what they're talking about. They see NC State as a program that is developmental and they get guys into the league. And with all this new success that we've had in the last couple of years, we're going to continue to see the numbers of players we're pushing off rise. The more talent you bring in, the more talent you can push out. So RJ Jones identifying NC State as a school that will help him get to that next level, that's so big for not only Jones in particular, but so many other players like Jones that are seeking their home at the next level to be a true place where they can develop everything about their game and themselves as a person before they move on about their life.
Yeah, and we've talked about Coach Thunder and his impact, but when you think about player development, there is something that was told to me by my head coach, Thomas Witcher, that stuck with me, and it sticks with me when I talk to recruits now or I talk to guys from my high school now. Make sure you get to know the strength conditioning coach, because you will spend more time with them under their direct supervision than you do your position coach all year. And most people don't believe it, but if you really think about it, there are limitations on how much time you can spend with every coach, how much time you can spend doing workouts, all that good stuff. You have more opportunity, and you're going to have, the rules are allow much more time in terms of conditioning, weightlifting, all that type of thing, all that, prehab, all that good stuff. That is all either athletic trainer or head strength and conditioning coach. And so, you talk about player development. Yes, your coaches obviously help you hone in on your skills, but what helps you get faster more than being more explosive?
Mm-hmm.
What helps you become a better tackler more than putting on 10 to 15 pounds of muscle, to where when people hit you, when you hit people, it's no longer an easy bounce off. It's wait a minute now. This is not a 180-pound corner. This is a 195-pound corner. Hold on. So that's one of those things that, RJ Jones III is definitely looking for the right place if you're talking player development, because we've talked about ad nauseum, even beyond just whether or not it's the weight room or the coaches, the fact that NC State has been one of the top producers of NFL guys out of former 3-stars, which Mr. Jones is.
And the second quote I want to talk about, and this is a big one, he says, quote, "They know how to recruit their guys, and I can tell by them coming down to Florida and getting dogs. I didn't know NC State was that huge. The academics are great. It's just great overall. It's a great environment," unquote. Remember what we told you about how important it was to not only build the fence around North Carolina, but then when you get more success, you can pick out of the pockets of other states. And by NC State going down into Florida and picking up one of the premier corners from down in Florida, we told y'all. We told y'all. But not only that, the specific line in this quote says, "I didn't know NC State was that huge." To me, what I take from that sentence alone is that people are paying attention to NC State, something else that we've been talking a lot about. When you have the season that we just had, and then you put together maybe an even more exciting offseason with all the new transfer additions, and again, the season that we are trying to have here in 2024, people take notice. Recruits take notice. And then once you can get them on campus, sometimes that's all it takes. RJ Jones has other visits already lined up that he no longer needs because he was that impressed with what NC State has to offer. So it's the little things. It's the impressions you make on these recruits not just within our own state, but other true football producing states as well. And Florida is a very big one of those. So this feels like a really good get for NC State, feels like a really good get for Tony Gibson, and the defensive reputation that he continues to build here in Raleigh sounds like yet another corner to be really excited about in the near future. Coming up next, we're talking about our second big recruit of the weekend, another wide receiver to add in the pocket of Joker Phillips. For a quick word from our sponsors. Our second sponsor of the day is FanDuel. It's summertime, and summertime means baseball. Not just the MLB, but the Super Regionals and Game 3 tonight in Athens, and you can bet it all on FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $200 back in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's right. That's $200 you can use to bet on everything from the NBA Finals MVP to who's going to hit one out of the park in the MLB. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and add a big win to your summer bucket list. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Rounding out our Monday show, now discussing our second big football commit of the weekend. That is 2025 wide receiver Jamar Browder. 6'3", three-star wide receiver out of Lake Worth, Florida. Also had quite an impressive offer list, including schools like Georgia Tech, Houston, Illinois, Indiana, and Louisville, just to name a couple. Previously had visits to App State and Indiana lined up in the next couple weeks, but very similar to RJ Jones. Saw what Dave Dorn and company had to offer and decided that would be that. Also thought it was extremely interesting that they chose CJ Bailey to be his host, as they're both from very similar areas of Florida. I'd have to imagine that was very much on purpose. And it got the job done. Browder is committed to NC State. Another very lengthy wide receiver to add into the repertoire. Big word for you here on Monday of Joker Phillips. You talk about another coach that has received a lot of criticism and, as quiet as it's kept, has completely flipped the script and has quite the cupboard he's stacking up with a lot of talent at the wide receiver position.
Yeah, the wide receiver room has gotten exponentially better in no time. And, there's some chatter about, man, it's going to be tough on these young guys to play early. Good. Like, that's how it should be. That's how the best programs are. It is tough for young guys to crack the lineup. But here's the thing. The best guys are going to play. Yeah. That's just the reality of how this thing is going to work out. And here's the interesting thing about Jamar Browder. Some websites list at 6'3.5", some have him listed at 6'5", whatever the case may be. Both of those are extremely tall for a receiver. Both of them are and he's only going into his junior year in high school, so he's still probably got some growing left. He is an absolute specimen, and it is going to be really good to see how he develops physically, as well as how the Wolfpack decide to use him, because there are so many different ways that you can use a guy that has his type of stature, and he's another guy with a somewhat impressive offer list as well. Again, I look at this young man and I say to myself, he can be somebody that, we talk about how the receiver room is primed for the next couple of years to be good. This is the type of stuff that makes that happen. The continuity of, hey, we had a great class in 24. We had a wonderful portal class as well. We got not just guys who are going to be starters and impactful, guys who are going to be starters, impactful, and they have longevity. Guys who have multiple years left. So you start there. You start with building out good high school class, and you stack them. You stack them on top of each other to where, and this is no shade to anybody, but you and I talked about another young man and how he left the program, and we were sad to see him go, but it's like, we get it. There's not a lot of place for you to go. A guy like Jamar Browder, he's going to be more likely than not on the outside. He's going to be asked to beat press. He's going to be asked to run big boy routes against corners and win some one-on-one matchups. And again, with his size, if he can play his size, he turns 50-50 balls into 75-25 balls right away. This is a big body Benz that can absolutely move, and I'm going to love to see what he can do for the Pack.
Something I find interesting is the way that you can really see how the priorities change over a period of time of what a coaching staff is looking for. And for wide receivers in particular, there really seems to be quite an emphasis on bigger, longer, athletic, speedy wide receivers, because that is something we've kind of lacked here of recently. I mean, the last couple of years, outside of Jakari Collins, who is 6'4", 6'5", haven't really had many pretty tall wide receivers. Think of Devin Carter, who is somewhere in that neighborhood. CJ Riley was up there. He was like 6'6", maybe 6'5".
Rosner
Was up there. Outside of just a handful of guys every so often, it's been the 6'1", 6'2", sometimes less than that because KC's like 5'10", 5'11". Those guys are getting the job done, but the vertical aspect that you can add to your game when you have a 6'5", 6'6" wide receiver, it changes the way you can run your offense. You can get so much more vertical in a short amount of time, and I only think that will play to the strength of Robert and I and the rest of this offense in the long term. So certainly going to have his work cut out for him with the amount of talent we've added at the wide receiver position lately. But like Kenton was talking about, that is the best problem that you can have. Teams like Alabama and Georgia and Ohio State, every year they feel like they have too much talent on their roster because they have so many guys vying for only so many spots. NC State needs to get into positions like that. They want to have so many wide receivers that it's like, man, I don't know how we're going to get all these guys into the game. We're going to have to see who rises to the top and proves themselves for the most playing time. That is where you want to get. And after seeing what we saw last year out of our wide receivers, being that there was only one reliable one, very quickly we went out and changed the dynamic of that, picking up a whole lot of talent at this position in particular. And Browder is the next one coming down the pipeline in 2025. So another guy that I think NC State fans should be really excited about. Still just a rising junior in high school. Probably tons of untapped potential to still work into, but very good to continue to start filling out your 2025, not only wish list, but commitment list. As we already have our 2025 quarterback in Will Wilson, who I will say it until the cows come home, he is the future of this program. So to add him a weapon in the 2025 class, can't say enough about how big that is at this point in the process.
Yeah, and be it Wilson, be it Bailey, whoever wins that battle, they're going to have a full artillery of weapons to work with, and that's what you love to see. You have competition at every spot, including the quarterback position. There's no better way to have it.
That'll do it for us here on Monday. Great weekend for NC State and more excitement to come here tonight. Again, Super Regional Game 3 down in Athens. NC State against Georgia. Logan Whitaker will get the start, biggest start of his life. We have our full stable of healthy bullpen arms right behind him. Make sure, if you are listening to this and you're an NC State fan, sit down and watch this game tonight. If you're new to college baseball or you've been watching college baseball your whole life, these moments, like we'll see tonight down in Athens, are what makes college sports in particular so special. It will be an insane atmosphere, winner take all. Whoever wins this game is going to Omaha. We all know what that means for our program. So already said it once, I'll say it again. We are built for moments like this one, and I can't wait to see us go get it tonight down in Athens. Also had 2 big football commitments over the weekend. Make sure to get your comments in the comment box. Tell us what you think about those. Hit that subscribe button if you have not already, and we will see you all on Wednesday, hopefully celebrating a team that is on their way to Omaha. But until then, go Pack.
Go Pack.